This is where one of the most important whistleblowers in my career lives. And he has decided that he is willing to work with me to tell the truth about what happened with him in Antarctica.
For years now, the people who work the freezing waters around Antarctica have reported the same impossible thing. Something pale, something enormous, a figure the length of a ship, gliding just beneath the surface where nothing that large should exist. Different crews, different decades, different nationalities, and somehow the same shape every single time. There is no body, no bones, no photograph anyone can verify. Science has no name for it, and no explanation that holds. And the strangest part, the detail that keeps this from ever being laid to rest, is what these figures look like, because they look like us. The loneliest sea. To understand what they keep seeing, you have to understand where they are, because the place is half the story. The Southern Ocean is the loneliest sea on Earth, and I don't mean that as poetry. It wraps the entire planet at its lowest latitude, one unbroken belt of water with no land anywhere in its path to slow it down. So the wind just builds and builds, and the waves it throws up are the tallest sustained seas anywhere on the map. Storms here don't blow through in an afternoon. They move in and stay for days. And the water is wrong too. Heavier than the water you and I know, dense and black and cold enough to stop your heart in minutes, pressing down into a deep that almost no human eye has ever seen. The people who work down there always tell you about the silence. When the engines throttle back and the wind drops for an hour, it goes total. No traffic, no town, no plane overhead. Just a man at a rail who can suddenly hear the blood moving in his own body. And that is the exact moment, in that exact silence, when the pale thing tends to show itself. No specimen, no proof. Before I take you one step further, I owe you complete honesty, because this whole thing falls apart without it. There is no specimen, no skeleton in a museum drawer, no verified photograph, no tissue sample, no single confirmed bone a scientist has ever held in a gloved hand. By every official measure we have, the thing these crews describe does not exist. It isn't in the textbooks. It isn't on any species list. Ask a marine biologist to confirm it, and they'll tell you, correctly, that there is nothing to confirm. And here is what should bother you. The story won't die anyway. It comes back every few years from a new crew on a new ship, and the description barely shifts. Different vessels, different nationalities, different decades, the same impossible shape. Most of the men who describe it swear they had never heard of it before the night it happened to them. They weren't chasing a story. The story came later when they were groping for any word that would explain what they had just watched glide past the hull. And the word they finally reached for is so much worse than monster. The name they reached for. The name is Ningen. It is Japanese, and it does not mean beast. It doesn't mean leviathan, or kraken, or serpent, or any of the old words sailors have always kept for the things in the deep. Ningen means human. Human being. Sit with that choice for a second, because it is everything. When these crews finally landed on a name for the pale giant in the water, they did not reach for a word that put distance between it and themselves. They reached for the most intimate word there is. They watched a thing as long as their ship slid through water deep enough to swallow a skyscraper. And the word that came out of them was the word for us. If you want to follow that word all the way to the bottom, subscribe and stay on this deck with me. Because once you call a thing a human being, you have planted an image no calm explanation ever pulls back out. And you still need to know who was doing the watching. The eyes that were there. Because these accounts did not come from tourists hanging off a cruise rail, or kids with big imaginations, they trace back to research and survey crews on long deployments. Whale researchers, fisheries observers, people logging ice and water temperature in conditions that would break most of us in a week. These were professionals who counted their time down there, not in trips but in seasons, in winters, in long, brutal stretches away from anything like home. Think about what that does to a person's eyes. A man who has spent 10 years watching for whales can tell you, at half a mile in bad light, whether that disturbance is a spout or just spray torn off a swell. His whole professional worth rests on not seeing things wrong. So when men like that, separately, on different ships, in different years, keep describing the same impossible shape, you don't get to wave it off. You lean in, and every one of them starts the story in exactly the same place. The ice that moved. It starts in the half-dark of the polar night, not true black, that strange, sourceless gray where the color drains out of everything. The water and the sky and the deck, all the same shade of old bone. A crewman is at the rail, doing what he has done 1,000 times, and he clocks a pale patch low in the water, lighter than the sea around it. His first thought, every time, is the most ordinary thought out there. Ice. Obviously it is ice. He has seen 10,000 pieces of it. He looks away to check an instrument, to write a number in a log. Then he looks back. And this is the beat that turns the blood cold in every version. The ice has moved. Not drifted, not bobbed on a swell. Moved, traveling across his eye line the way drifting ice simply does not. Worse, it is moving against the current, slow and steady, holding a line. And that is the thing he cannot argue his way out of. Ice has no will. It goes where the wind and water shove it. You can talk yourself out of a shape in the dark. You cannot talk yourself out of intention, out of the awful sense that the thing had chosen where it was going. And when he called the others over, they saw it too. The shape that was wrong. That is what lifts this above one man's bad night. One witness can be tired, mistaken, primed by a story he half remembers. Several sober professionals at the same rail, watching the same patch of water at the same moment, is a lot harder to dismiss. And what they describe is wrong. Not wrong like a strange fish is wrong. Wrong in a way that pointed at something none of them wanted to say out loud. These were men who knew whales like co-workers. Every whale has a logic, a shape you can name, a movement you can call before it happens. This had none of it. It was pale where every animal they knew was dark, and it turned the way a swimmer turns. Not the roll of a whale, not the flick of a fish, but a turn with a torso in it, pivoting around a center the way a body pivots in a pool. Then there was the arrangement. Up top, a bulk that sat exactly where a head and a pair of shoulders sit, rounded at the crown, broadening below. The silhouette of a person standing with their back to you in dim light. Below it, long, pale limbs trailing down into the dark. And the men who got the longest look, the ones whose voices dropped when they finally spoke of it, said those limbs ended in something worse. A hand. 5 pale fingers spread in the water. And in the worst tellings, that hand opened and closed, slow, like it was testing the water, or reaching, or just flexing in the cold. The account split from there. Some swore they saw 2 long legs kicking slow beneath it. A full human shape blown up to the length of a freighter. Others said no legs at all, a single smooth taper fusing into one powerful tail. And a handful, the ones who got closest, say they saw the face. Eyes set forward, both aim the same way a predator's eyes aim, the way yours do. And in the worst version of all, those eyes turned, found the men at the rail, and held. But nobody on that deck was asking the question that actually decides this case. Where did this story really come from? Where it really came from. Because the trail is murkier than the believers like to admit. For all the talk of survey crews and seasoned professionals, the Ningen did not reach the world through a logbook or a report. It reached us through a screen. The story started spreading in the mid-2000s on Japanese internet forums, handed anonymously from one user to the next in the small hours of the night. And the shape of the telling was always the same. Someone knew someone, a relative who had worked a ship in the far south, a friend of a friend who came back changed and went quiet whenever it came up. And with every retelling it grew. A detail here, a sharper image there, the length creeping from 20 meters up to 30 as the story got passed along. That is how a legend breathes in the dark. And notice what was locked in from the very start, before the photos, before the arguments, the name. It always already had a name. Take the name away. Call it a pale drifting mass, and the dread drains right out. Leave it in, and it never lets go. Which leaves us with one honest question. The case that will not close. What do you actually do with all of it? Strip away the forums and the friend of a friend, and you are left with 2 arguments squared off on a dark deck. The believers hold one card, and it is stronger than skeptics like to admit. Consistency. Witnesses on different ships in different years, separated by oceans and languages, keep landing on the same shape, same impossible pale color, same vast length, same arrangement of head and shoulders and trailing limbs. And they ask the question that should make you pause. If this were only tired eyes and frightened minds, why does the imagination keep building the exact same monster? Why never a tentacle, never a serpent, always us? And the geography under them is almost frightening. The deep is real, the blank spaces on the map are real. Science itself keeps admitting the ocean hides giants we never knew about. The giant squid was a sailor's tall tale for centuries until a body finally washed up. So, could the Southern Ocean hide something enormous? Honestly, yes. But here is where it turns, and this is the part I cannot argue past. Could hide is not the same as does hide. The deep can conceal a 60-foot animal in lightless water no eye will ever reach. What it cannot do is conceal a 30-meter humanoid surfacing beside ships in the gray light of dawn. The second a thing is seen at the surface, it is not hidden anymore. Something that size, breathing and rising for as long as this legend claims, would not be a whisper on a forum. It would be netted, beached, and photographed 10,000 times over. So, the most likely answer is the quiet one. Wind and wave sculpted ice, carved into a swell like shoulders and a ridge like a head, drifting in light so dim everything wears the color of bone. Read by a brain wired across 1,000,000 years to find faces in shadow and bodies in noise, doing exactly what it was built to do. And yet, the file stays open and the legend will not die. Which is exactly why I keep pulling these cases up out of the dark, and why you should subscribe before the next one, because the thing waiting at the edge of the map is colder still. But before you go, I need your verdict. When you weigh all of it, the movement against the current, the forward-facing eyes, the name those crews reached for before anyone could talk them out of it, which single detail is the one you honestly cannot explain away? Drop it in the comments, because maybe the Ningen was never about a creature at all. Maybe it is about the oldest fear we carry. Not that something monstrous lives in the dark at the bottom of the world, but that something down there has a face we would recognize. Forward-facing eyes that find you at the rail, and hold, and seem for one frozen second to know exactly what you are.